Good day to all of you. And now, for today's lesson, we're going to discuss about environmental crisis. Anthropogenic impact on the environment. From our earliest ancestors, humans have modified the environment for thousands of years, enabled to make our surroundings more sustainable to live a life. On how we cultivate our lands to grow crops for our food. This is just an example on how we, humans, have an impact to the environment where we live. We have a lot of activities in which our environment to be described as pristine nature, or ecosystem untouched by human intervention which is no longer exists. Either directly or indirectly, human activities cause changes and have an impact in biophysical, environment, biodiversity, ecosystems, and natural resources. Development happens in surroundings, industrialization, and release of such substances that harms the environment are all human impacts that affect the environment. It also includes environmental degradation and global warming. Overpopulation caused by a human activity have environmental impact, which is the urbanization that leads to increase the demand of basic necessities. Being able to supply the increasing needs of our environment will undergo two changes in response: deforestation, pollution, overexploitation, overconsumption, and uncontrollably growth in population are some of the human activities in common to damage our environment. Garbage problems. Rapid flowing is caused by a build-up of garbage that obstructs the free flow of water. Waste or garbage improper disposal might enter the drainage system and clogs drains that results in flooding during a rainfall. Improper disposal of waste also causes water pollution and obstruct natural flow of water in streams, rivers. Soil, water, and air pollution become worse as a result of improper disposal of waste with hazardous materials and substances. The rate amounts of quality of municipal garbage rises in relation to booming economy, increase in population, rapid urbanization, and rise in standard of living. Harmful effect of garbage disposal. Contaminated water is a threat as it makes the people to have leptospirosis, cholera, and dysentery. These diseases causes serial health epidemics and can lead to death in the population. When hazardous chemicals improperly disposed directly to the soil, it results in impairment of plant growth. This explains how the amount of food production in plants, fruit-bearing trees, and root crops decreases. Deforestation. Humans cleared the half of the world's nature because of deforestation. Forests are being removed and converted for non-forest use. Pastoralization and agriculture as the major reason of deforestation. Other reasons include selective logging in forests as illegal logging for timber and massive burning of trees to produce charcoal. Deforestation in the Philippines. In local studies about deforestation, Philippines forests have found that in 20th century it's dropped from 70% down to 20%. As a result of this drop percentage of forest in states with 46 species, certain animals are endangered and 4 species were already extinct. Furthermore, there are 33.2% of total rainforest has been left, which are not really enough to reduce the chance of flooding and landslide in high areas. There is an analysis in land shows that 9.8 million acres of forest were being lost in the Philippines from the year 1934 to 1980. And according to scholar Jessica Matthews, short-sighted policies by the Filipino government have contributed to the high rate of deforestation. The government regularly granted logging concessions of less than 10 years, since it takes 30 to 35 years for a second growth forest to mature. Loggers had no incentive to replant, compounding the error. Flat royalties encourage the loggers to remove only the most valuable species, a horrendous 40% of the harvestable lumber never left the forest but having been damaged in the logging, dead, or was burned in place. The unsurprising result of this and related policies is that out 17 million hectares of closed forest that flourished in the century, only 1.2 billion remain today.
Hi everyone, my name is John Vincent Gregorio and now I'm discussing the degradation of water quality. Discharge of domestic and industrial effluent waste, leakage from water tanks, marine dumpings, radioactive waste, and atmospheric disposition are major causes of water pollution. So water pollution occurs when harmful substances, often chemicals or microorganisms, contaminate a stream, rivers, lake, ocean, and other bodies of water, quality rendering it toxic to human or to the environment. The next one is a scarcity of fresh water. Water scarcity is lack of fresh water resources to meet the water standard demand. Humanity is facing water crisis due to unequal distribution, resulting in some very wet and some very dry geographic location, plus a sharp rise in global freshwater demand in recent decades driven by industry. Shortage of water for sustained period is called water scarcity. Growing population, overexploitation, and unequal distribution of water among social groups are the main cause of water scarcity. And the next one is climate change. Climate change is a change in the usual weather found in a place. This could be the changes in how much rain in a place usually get in a year, or it could be the changes in the place's usually temperature for a month or season. Climate change is also the change in Earth climate. These changes are caused by extra heat in the climate system due to the addition of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. The additional greenhouse gases are primarily input by human activities such as burning of fossils like coal, oil, and natural gas, agriculture, and land clearing.
Good day, I'm Nicole Andrea Montaron from BSED 2A Science. So, what is greenhouse effect? Greenhouse effect is a process that occurs when gases in Earth's atmosphere trap the sun's heat. This process makes Earth much warmer than it would be without an atmosphere. It is basically a natural process that has a significant impact on the temperature on Earth. However, human activities are changing Earth's natural greenhouse effect. Burning fossil fuel cells like coal and oil puts more carbon dioxide into our atmosphere and increase its concentration. Greenhouse gases are those gases in the atmosphere that have an influence on the Earth's energy balance. Most greenhouse gases can have either a natural or an anthropogenic man-made source, like carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. In addition to these trace gases, which can only be found in very low concentrations in the atmosphere, water vapor is probably the most important greenhouse gases. However, it only plays a major role in relation to the natural greenhouse effect, since the absorption capacity of water vapor in the air is directly related to temperature. Water vapor therefore has little influence on man-made climate change. Solar radiation hits the Earth's surface and in turn, Earth radiates the energy back into space. Some gases of the atmosphere trap some of the outgoing energy and retain heat. This causes an increase in the global temperature and also causes subsequent changes. the weather pattern. Gases which trap the heat energy are known as greenhouse gases. All greenhouse gases are positive radiative, forcing agents and are capable of disturbing the energy balance in the atmosphere. So these are some issues associated with the environmental crisis are not strictly environmental but are closely related to environmental issues. First is population growth. The total human population has expanded since the introduction of agriculture around 12,000 years ago, and its rate of growth has generally increased over time, largely as a result of increased food production and improved sanitation and healthcare. Achieving the first 1 billion of human population took most of the human history, while the most recent increase of 1 billion was achieved a little more than a decade. However, recent declines in the rate of growth of population have occurred in many parts of the world. And in some countries, populations are now declining. The total human population was around 5.9 billion in 1998. It currently far exceeds 6 billion people and is expected to have reached 9.4 billion people by 2050. The increasing human population inevitably places greater demands on the natural environment for habitat, resources, and waste assimilation, although the extent to which the human population explosion is driving environmental degradation. It is a complex and controversial question.
Good day, I'm Cherlyn D. Laila from BSED 2A Science, and today I'm going to report the global warming and the climate change. First, what is the global warming and the climate change? It is referred to the global temperature due to the increase of the greenhouse effect by the increase in the greenhouse gases. In 1880, Earth's temperature reached to the 0.8 degrees Celsius or 1.4 degree Fahrenheit. This has reached a peak in 2014, even though it is an El Niño neutral year. The warming of Earth has been increasingly more steadily during the last decades, as you can see at the figure. And according to John Cook writing, which is the Skeptical Science Blog 2010, there are 10 indicators of human fingerprints in global warming which are observed. And those are A. Shrinking thermosphere, B. Rising troposphere, C. Less oxygen in air, D. Release of 30 billion tons of CO2 or carbon dioxide annually, E. Nights warming faster than days, 6 more heat release or return to Earth, F. More fossil fuel carbon in the air, G. Cooling of stratosphere, H. Less heat escape to space, and lastly, the letter I. More fossil fuels in carbon on corals. For the last 650 million years, our planet has underwent several glacial advance and retreats, including catastrophic events. These changes were occurred due to the small variation in solar energy received by Earth during such events and often changes the global atmospheric carbon dioxide or CO2 levels. After the Ice Age or 7,000 years ago, modern climate era begins or modern climatic era begins with the emerge of human civilization. Last 3 decades has shown rapid increase in global atmospheric carbon dioxide levels which never happened before.
Effects of climate change. A. Temperature will continue to rise. Mountains, glaciers, and rivers will start to disappear, and mountains regions will see more landslide as the permafrost that held them together melts away. B. Dry and wet season will lengthen. The length of the frost-free season has been increasing nationally since the 1980s. In a future in which heat-trapping gas emissions to continue to grow, increase of a month or more in the length of the frost-free and growing season are projected across most of the U.S. by the end of the century, with slightly smaller increases in the northern Great Plains. C. Changes in precipitation patterns. Average U.S. precipitations has increased since 1900, but some areas have had increases and greater than the national average, and some areas have had decreases. More winter and spring precipitation is projected for the northern United States and less for the Southwest over this century. D. More droughts and heat waves. Droughts in the Southwest and heat waves everywhere are projected to become more intense, and cold waves less intense everywhere. E. Hurricanes will become stronger and more intense. The relative contributions of human and natural causes to this increase are still uncertain. Hurricane-associated storm intensity and rainfall rates projected to increase as the climate continues to warm. F. Sea level will rise. This is the result of added water from melting land ice and the expansion of seawater as it warms. G. Arctic likely to become ice-free. The loss of the summer sea ice in the Arctic is now very likely before 2050, even if the carbon emissions driving the climate crisis are cut rapidly. Global temperature rise. The average global temperature on Earth has increased by a little more than 1 degree Celsius since 1880. Two-thirds of the warming has occurred since 1975 at a rate of roughly 0.15 to 0.20 degrees Celsius per decade. The global temperature record represents an average over the entire surface of the planet. The temperatures we experience locally and in short periods can fluctuate significantly due to predictable cyclical events and hard-to-predict wind and precipitation patterns. But the global temperature mainly depends on how much it radiates back in space, quantities that change very little. Warming oceans. The warming of the oceans has widespread effect. It causes marine heat waves that kill fish and coral reefs, fuel hurricanes and coastal downpours, spawns harmful toxin-producing algal blooms, and also contributes to heat waves on land. Shrinking ice sheets. Ice sheets contain about 99% of the fresh water on Earth and are sometimes called continental glaciers. As ice sheets extend to the coast and over the ocean, they become ice shelves. Today, there are only two ice sheets in the world: the Antarctic ice sheets and the Greenland ice sheets. During the last glacial period, however, much of the Earth was covered by ice sheets. Glacial retreat. Glaciers are large masses of ice that flow slowly downhill. A glacier's glow wherever snow accumulates faster than it melts. Glaciers have advanced and retreated over large areas of the northern hemisphere over geological time. Their growth accompanying the cold period terms glacial. Decrease snow covers. While snow covers affect climate, changes in climate also affect snow cover. Overall, warmer temperature also shortening the amount of time snow on the ground in the northern hemisphere. Recent temperature increases in the Arctic have also led to decreased snow and ice cover in many areas during parts of the year. And they also lead to earlier melting of snow cover, which is changing when and how much water is available in some rivers and reservoirs, as well as lengthening the growing season. Sea level rise. Global warming is causing global, means sea level to rise in two ways. First, glaciers and ice sheets worldwide are melting and adding water to the ocean. Second, the volume of the ocean is expanding as the water warms. Declining Arctic sea ice. Sea ice keeps our planet cooler. So when we lose ice, the entire world warms. Sea ice in the Arctic has decreased dramatically since the late 1970s, particularly in summer and autumn. Since the satellite record began in 1978, the yearly minimum Arctic sea ice extent has decreased about 40%. Ice covers expands again each Arctic winter, but the ice is thinner than it used to be. Extreme events. Extreme events, a term today most commonly understood and used in relation to extreme weather phenomena and experiencing an upsurge in its usage due to their increased frequency caused by climate change, is applied in a variety of scientific disciplines. Its multitude of users understands and defines the term differently. However, consistency in language is vital to eradicate confusion, supports the transfer of knowledge from one field to another, and make results from different disciplines comparable.
For the continuation, I am Marlene Javier from BSED 2A Science. B. Urbanization. Urbanization, it refers to the population shift from rural to urban areas. The decrease in the proportion of people living in rural areas and the ways in which societies adapt to this change, poor air and water and waste disposal are exacerbated by the increasing of population. Half of the global population already living in cities, which is urban. C. Poverty. It is the one of the most difficult problem in our country, not just our country, but also the others. Also, poverty is the state of not having enough materials, possession, or income for a person's needs. Many people lives with having not enough needs to survive in their everyday lives. Poverty may include social, economic, and political elements. D. Food insecurity. There's an insufficient supply of food. Food insecurity, also defined as the disruption of food intake or eating patterns because of lack of money and other resources at all times. Have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their food preferences and dietary needs for an active and healthy life. E. Disease. Sometimes disease comes from being malnutrition, polluted foods, waters, and air. It is also because of bad sanitation, lack of money to buy medicine, and adequate shelters. F. Peak oil and energy insecurity. When peak oil occurs, production will decline approximately 3% per year at a time where global demand is increasing at 3% per year. Eventually, the rest of the decline in oil production would have to be absorbed by a prolonged economic depression. G. Conflict and displacement. Violent conflict causes millions of people to flee their homes every year. The resulting of displacement crisis not only create logistical and humanitarian nightmares. These crises threaten international insecurity, risk. Despite the dangers posed by conflict included displacement people, did workers and peacekeepers